All right. Okay, let's get started. All right, good evening and welcome to Tuesday night, Mate to Mate at 8. My name is Craig Turton, your host for this evening, as I am each and every Tuesday night. As I said, my name is Craig Turton. I'm a proud co-founder of 100 Words Mate to Mate. We are a men's health organisation reducing the stigma around men's mental health and trying to reduce the number of men that take their own lives in this country every day, which is currently over 6. It's an horrendous number. Far too many men take their own life in this country, and we are trying our darndest to do about it. Okay? Now, at any stage tonight with what we are talking about, if it ever gets a little bit too much for you, there is always a number to ring. That number is this: 131114. There's a number for Lifeline. There is always someone there to pick up. Okay? So if you're feeling at all concerned about anything, ring that number. So tonight, I'm really lucky to have this gentleman tonight. But before we do, there's a couple of other things we need to talk about. First of all, I am not a doctor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm in fact a house painter who is just trying to do his darndest to prove to you men out there how simple it is to communicate with your mates and your friends, okay? So we started a campaign a few weeks ago called Mate to Mate at 8. So the rules of engagement are this. We want you to ring a mate of yours at either 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night and ask him this: "G'day, mate. How's your day been out of 10? Or, "G'day, mate. How's your week been out of 10? He will give you a number, and from there, you will know exactly how he's going. Now, as you can see on the screen, there's a poll just come up. So we want you to tell us how your day has been out of 10, okay? And we'll go through those numbers a bit later. At the moment, we've had anything from a 6 through to a 9. So that's great to see the 9, and hopefully we can improve the day of that person who's currently having a 6. Now, tonight, we have gone to the top drawer in regards to infectious characters that I've met. I've only known this gentleman for the last 9 months. We met at Mitcham event that we ran last year. What an infectious character Andy Reid is. He's one of Melbourne's leading auctioneers. At the moment, he's currently locked up in Crown Casino. There's the great man, Andy Reid.
Mate, don't go banging on about infections when I'm sat here, right?
No, I said infectious, not infection.
They'll lock me up for longer, mate.
No. Look at him. Now, here he is. He's sitting at Crown Casino, all pompous like he is, with his backdrop. It looks like I'm on the bloody set of Jimmy Fallon. Seriously. I've got a poster on the back wall here, and you've got the bloody Melbourne city skyline. Turn that blue light off. It's annoying me.
Well, mate, seriously, if you've, if it's at Joe taxpayers' expense, then why not?
So we will get to the reason that you are in Crown Casino at the moment in a little bit. Now, mate, thank you so much for your time tonight. We talked about you coming on the show for a while, and I am absolutely pumped to have you on, buddy. I really, really am.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us, how's your day been out of 10 today, mate?
I'll probably say it's a 7.5.
Yep.
Roughly. If I was a free man, it'd probably be a 9. It'd be getting up there. Yeah, when you can't see your family, there's always going to be a couple of points docked at least, right?
Absolutely.
How about you, man? How are you out of 10?
Oh, man, I'm probably about a 6 or a 7. I had a day today that was just a bit of a nothing day. I've got a couple of mates that are really struggling, and I know they'll be watching tonight, and they're just doing it hard, mate. They're really doing it hard, and hopefully I know tonight will be a benefit to them. I know they're watching, and it hurts, mate. When you know your mates are doing it hard, it hurts. So, but mate, I've got a smile on my face. I'm talking to you, and I'm really looking forward to tonight's chat, buddy.
Mate, so am I, man. So am I. Thank you so much for having me on, by the way. It's quite a privilege.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure, mate. It's our pleasure to have you. So, mate, now tell us a little bit about the great man that is Andy Reid.
The great man. You know how to make me squirm. Look, I'm a Pom. I've been over here in Australia for about 10.5 years now. Married to my better half, which is Felicity. Got 2 young kids, a 5-year-old girl called Eliza, 2-year-old called Callum. I run an auctioneering business, and I've got a marketing business as well. And yeah, and it's this whole trip down mental health lane has been an interesting ride over the last 5 years. So yeah, it's Australia is definitely been a change for the better in many ways.
Very good, mate. Now we'll get to that. The road you said of 5 years. It's been a long road for you. Now we've only met roughly about 9 months ago at the Mitcham event.
Yep.
Where you stood up in front of 160 blokes in which you didn't know.
Nope.
You had no intentions of doing that. You were there. You asked to be there as a auctioneer for the night. Yep. To auction off all the charity items that we had. So we'll get to that in a minute. But mate, let's just talk about the depression and anxiety and how it started and how you came to realise that you were suffering.
Well, I suppose really the tip of the iceberg was when my first child, Eliza, was born, and I presumed that I was just going to be an amazing dad. And then when I wasn't, I started to really question myself and everything that I was cracking on with. And Eliza was about 8 months old, and Felicity and I had the biggest argument that we'll ever have in our relationship. It was the only time really that I made an excuse to leave the house. And prior to that, I'd been sort of making appointments, work appointments at silly times, like really not necessary times and stuff. And I had a bit of an inkling that all was not completely well. But when I got back, having calmed down a bit, Flick was really calm, and she sort of sat me down and said, "Look, Andy, I think you've got a bit of a postnatal depression, and I think you need to go talk to someone." And I think because of how much I respect her and her opinion, and she's generally not too far off the mark. I'm not the hardest person to read. I was like, well, maybe I do. So I called Lifeline and put me in the lap of my doc, and that was the start of it.
So two things for me. One of them is that you had a bit of a gut feel that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And the other thing was that there's a lot of guys that I know, and probably a lot of guys you know too, mate, that if their wife has said to them that there's something wrong, they wouldn't really take to that too well. So kudos to you for listening to your wife, who obviously knows you extremely well. But not a lot of guys can take that sort of feedback online and deal with it. So, mate, was that hard to take?
You know what? I think because I was it's weird. At the end of the day, like we've said in our conversations, mate, there's 7.6 whatever it is billion people on the planet, and we're all wired differently, every single one of us. So ultimately, if I was being honest with myself, I knew something was wrong, and I'd known if I cared to admit, I probably knew for a bit longer than even before Eliza was born, to be perfectly frank. It's just that when you have a kid, obviously, all the raw emotion in there, sleep deprivation and all that sort of stuff brought it to a bit of a head. So I think one of the reasons why I took it as well as I did is that, like, I was sort of done sort of bullshitting myself, to be perfectly frank. And she just sort of brought, I think part of the reason why lads really act sort of adversely to that sort of suggestion is the fact that they know that whoever's saying it is right, but they don't want to admit it through fear of not being a bloody bloke. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably part of the reason why people act so badly towards those sort of situations sometimes.
Exactly, because inevitably all your beautiful wife was doing was telling you something you already knew.
Yeah.
In your heart, you knew that you were struggling and doing it tough.
And if anything, it was like her telling me that it kind of gave me permission to accept it. So there was a degree of relief involved, I reckon, more than anything else. That she said it so that I didn't have to, which I think is quite important. She's the one that I've said this to her face. Like, if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be on this planet talking to you, mate. Simple as that.
That's an amazing admission there, and that must make her feel amazing, mate. That she's had such a positive imprint on you. For you to say that's massive, mate. Massive.
And that's I think we all need to do that, especially with all this other stuff that's gone on in the world, and there's so much more external pressure kicking on, right? If someone's done something right by you, just tell them.
Yeah,
it's pretty important, that.
Absolutely, mate. How low did it get?
Pretty
bad.
We were facing our own mortality, mate. Let's be as politically correct as possible. There was, without, I'll go into as much detail as you want, mate. I don't want to poke any bears or anything like that, but there was one particular scenario where I got in the car in the middle of the day at work and just drove aimlessly for, I think it was like an hour and 46 minutes. Like, it was really weird. I just remember the exact time I got in the car and the exact time I got out, and it was almost out of body. Like my body just took over, and I didn't know where I was going. And there was a real tasty telegraph pole that was looking quite appealing, and my steering wheel started veering towards, and a juggernaut, a big truck coming the other way as well, that I started feeling my steering wheel heading towards, and thankfully something stopped me.
Yeah, mate, it's tough to talk. Is it still tough to talk about, bud?
No,
That's
because I'll be damned if I'm going to reach that point. I'll be damned if I you can't. I think knowledge is useless, and experiences are absolutely useless. Bad ones are absolutely useless, and unless you're sharing with people so that it might help other people to not get to that point.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I own it. I own it. At the end of the day, I was there, been there, done that, got the T-shirt, unfortunately. Yeah, like, that's why I'm so sort of honoured to be on a show like this, because if my battle scars can help other people to not get to that point, wicked. That's amazing.
It's a powerful position to have, and it's people like yourself, mate, who take the ownership of what's happened to them, and now, through the bravery and honesty that you have, impart that knowledge on other people. And mate, there is no doubt, we've talked about this in the past, about the positive impact that the honesty in someone like yourself has on people every day.
Massive, man. I mean, it doesn't really matter what industry you're in or anything like that. There is still so many alpha males kicking around, and this, mental health awareness is definitely on the rise, which is incredible. But there's still that awkwardness, right? Of what to do with it. I know for a fact that I've owned this for, like what we said last night. I've owned this since sort of the middle-ish of last year. Truly owned it. And I let it slip in a conversation that could have potentially took me into a really healthy sort of position with regards to work and stuff. And then once I'd had that conversation, I was so open and honest about it, it flatlined. That interest in me flatlined so quickly. They might not realize it, and I haven't mentioned it to them, but it happened. So there's always going to be that apprehension, right? Of whether, is it going to affect my career or my income or things like that.
Yeah. Now, mate, we talked about that the drink was a bit of an issue there at one stage, and you had a sobering experience, pardon the pun, where you just went, no, I can't do it anymore.
Nah, well, it's not a drinking problem as in I was an alcoholic or anything like that. I used to be a bar manager, so I've seen the bad stuff that comes with alcoholism, and my father had issues with alcoholism as well. So I'd seen it and I didn't want to do it. But part of my evolution, I'm not even going to call it a recovery, part of my evolution through mental health was, that whole notion of knowledge is power. And so I was educating myself all the time through this. And one thing that I tripped up upon was how alcohol was a natural blocker of serotonin, which is one of the happy chemicals that your brain produces, right? And I'd been on a huge road trip bender with my brother-in-law and a mate, and it was a cracking night, absolute belter. And when I was drunk, I was always a lover, not a fighter. Like, nothing stopped me from being happy, right? So And we got back, and it was the Monday night after the Saturday. And I'd had a day at work, and my daughter, who was about 1.5 at the time, sort of came bumbling up to me and said, "Daddy, come play." And I fobbed her off because my head was still really fuzzy and cloudy because of my lack of serotonin and whatnot. And I was feeling really down and sluggish. And I fobbed her off. I sort of said, "Nah, darling, daddy tired tonight." And she just so innocently went, "Oh, that's okay, Daddy. That's okay, Daddy. I go bed." And it just ripped my heart out, man. I mean, there's no, that was just immense. That was just the most powerful thing that a 1.5-year-old could have ever done.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it obviously had a huge impact on you. And but hats off to you. Like it'd be an easy thing to say, I'll just jump off for a couple of weeks or a couple of months and then jump back on. But you know what that does to you now. So it's, as you say, it would be silly to go there.
Oh, look, man, it was a conversation. It was a pretty tough conversation with my wife because, she's not an alcoholic, but she likes a beer, and we both enjoy going out. I mean, we met in a bar environment working together. So drinking and socializing and stuff was part of our MO as a couple. And it was a pretty tough conversation, and she needed convincing to a degree. She was never going to stop me, but she needed convincing that it wasn't going to heavily impact on our social lives. So I had to put effort into just reassure her that that wasn't going to be the case. And, making sure we were staying out till whenever she wanted to stay out till, and, not being a spoil sport and all that sort of stuff. And, that night after Eliza said that to us, we're about burst into tears, man. Absolutely. I was like, I can't handle it. I can't handle how this was impacting my abilities as a dad. And so that was the trade-off. I either be an amazing dad, be an okay dad 7 days a week, or have a few beers on a Saturday for what? All right, for 3 days because it was getting that bad. Like my brain just wasn't right, because subsequently we've discovered through psychiatrists and things like that I've got a natural problem with the production of serotonin. So why hamper that even further? There's just no point.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Now, mate, as I said before, we only met 9 months ago, and it was you. As I said, you were there as an auctioneer, and as we do at all our major events, I go around and do an open mic session, and it generally only needs one person to start, and inevitably a lot of people in the crowd sort of get behind it and start standing up and telling their deepest, darkest sort of thoughts and secrets. So on that night, we had about 9. And from memory, I think you might have been the last one or the second last one.
Mm.
So, you've probably been sitting there watching it for about an hour. What made you talk for the first time publicly in front of 160 blokes you've never met?
It was the responsibility that I felt with respect to the knowledge and the experiences that I had, that I felt I needed to share so that people might avoid going down a path that I've been down, and like you hear, first and foremost, the courage that I felt off the other lads that had stood up and spoken out already was so powerful. It was really quite intense, to be perfectly honest, in a good way. I'm saying that in a good way. And I felt almost overwhelmed with that level of courage, plus the responsibility that I felt. It was always something that I said to my wife about a year or so into the trip. And I said to her, because she asked me if she could share my issues with her best friend, who she had a few concerns for as well. I said, darling, you can share it with whoever you think is going to benefit from it, right? Seriously, that's the least that she deserves, is to be able to use the power that we've got to go and help other people. Yeah. So there was always that sort of air of responsibility. But that night, it was just the courage that the other people had shown. I was like, man, I've got to step up here. I've got a responsibility to myself and the community to sort of help the cause a little bit.
And you're a man who stands up, whose job it is to stand up in front of people who you don't know and run auctions.
Yep.
You would think that it would be pretty easy, but to talk about that, and you said that was the very, very first time you've spoken about it. How did you feel after it, mate? Like driving home, did you think, shit, I had no intention of doing that? And what was the feeling?
Oh, it was an achievement. It was an achievement. It was a milestone. That was sort of the real straw that broke the camel's back with respect to true ownership of it. And I'm saying true ownership because I sort of gave it lip service about 6 months or 7 months previously, about the start of 2018. And then I had a major downfall, and that was probably the second time that I was sort of facing my own mortality around that sort of March, April time. And so I thought I'd owned it, but I hadn't. And then I was sort of getting my head around it and whatnot. It was sort of one of the last big challenges because the deeper you dig into it, the harder it gets. So that was a real milestone. It was a massive milestone for me. And it's almost like a huge sense of relief, like weights lifted off your shoulders, like you wouldn't believe, and understanding by just putting it out there in the ether. Lots of people won't get to that point because they don't feel they need to. They might not be that way inclined. But for me, knowing that like you said, my week to week job is being in front of people that I don't know and having having someone's real estate transaction in my hands, it was almost like it made it not about me. Until that point, it was about me. But the reason why I was saying it was to benefit other people. It wasn't for my own health. And that was the big changing point.
And what did Flick say when you went home and told her what you did?
She wasn't surprised. Like she like I say, I was brought up by coppers, so I'm the shittest liar on the planet. Except for this whole feelings thing, I managed to pull it off for a couple of decades, right? But in terms of stuff like that, like she knows me well enough now she wasn't surprised. I mean, she was proud. Don't get me wrong; she was celebrated it. Like we were really proud of me and whatnot, and she vocalized that. But she wasn't surprised, man. She knew I was probably going there with an intention.
Yeah, you just needed the vehicle to get on.
100%, man.
Yeah. Now, mate, you've talked to me before about when you were really, really struggling, that 20 or 25 minutes of running the auction was just the only part of your week that you felt safe and secure and okay.
Yep.
That, mate, 25 minutes out of the week is not a long time.
No. No, it's not. And you can, like I said, like this is, I'm preaching to converted here, right? Like so many people, they can cover it up real easy, like really easily. Like for me, the main way I covered it up, I was always busy. Like I love work. I love working hard. Like loads of people would see it on like social media feeds and whatnot. Like I'm up till whenever, but that's by choice. I kind of love it. But it became a bit of a cover over a rather sizable issue, right? So and it got to the point where, and it's a bit of a contradiction, right, that the one place I feel safe is in front of a whole bunch of people with all their eyes on me, right? It's a bit of a contradiction, but it's that whole thing of that wiring that you guys helped to provide me with regards to all this, that I am the least important person in this transaction, in this action that I'm taking. I'm doing this for the benefit of other people. Therefore, I don't have to worry about my own ego because it's not about me. And it would, it'd be weird. So I'd not feel very good in the car, and then I'd get out of the car and turn it on, and then as soon as I get back in the car, I mean, there was a few Saturdays where I did the auction, and I probably did one, like some of the best auctions I've done when I've been really down in the depths. I get back in the car in the middle of a Saturday afternoon and just burst into tears. It's like everything just came crashing back in, like all the concerns and worries and stresses and overthinking just all came crashing back in. But that 25 minutes, that was when the picture I have of it is just like looking out to a real calm sea on the horizon with the sunset. That's my brain during an auction. That's my brain. It's the rest of the time where it's noisy.
So it would be fair to say now that your life now is like one big auction?
It's getting there. That's the goal. That's the
Yeah,
goal.
no, it hasn't gone. No, it hasn't gone.
Yeah.
But it's getting a lot better than what
100%.
it was. Now, that only happens because of the amount of work that you put in. So, one of the main reasons to get you on tonight was to talk about what you've been through and how you've educated and got yourself in a much better frame of mind, and talk us through what's. I know the last 2.5 months might have been so bloody hard on you, but just tell everyone what's happened. You've done all this work on yourself. You've realised you're suffering from a mental health issue. You've done all this work, and we called it the other night. We called it training,
Yeah.
and then you got to put it into practice over the last couple of months. Just tell people what happened there.
Okay, so obviously, the problem that everyone's been dealing with, which is COVID, hit at the end of March, and me being an auctioneer and auctions getting, thanks to ScoMo, getting sort of knocked on the head there. I think I watched about 16 grand of income just dissipate out the window, and it was weird. I was really quite oddly calm about all that, and then because I felt that, well, everybody's in the same position, so it's, at the end of the day, the economy is going to have to stop for everybody at some point. But then the week after, so the first week of April, like my dad had been losing weight for a little while. They were out. My mum and dad were out in Australia, January, February. He started losing weight while he was over here, and then he kept losing weight, and to the point where he really he almost kind of like half collapsed, where we think retrospectively it was probably the first of his strokes. And we found out in the first week of April that he had terminal pancreatic cancer, and that was on a Thursday. He then had a stroke over the weekend, but then on the following Thursday, we then found out that my mum had breast cancer as well. Now, like I said, my dad unfortunately was terminal, and I was sort of working out, do I hang back for a bit and see what the prognosis is with regards to timeframes and stuff. And then when we found out that my mum had breast cancer, and thankfully it had been caught incredibly early, geez, if that's not a lesson that you need to go get things checked on a regular basis, guys and gals, we're talking prostate, testicles, all that sort of stuff, because it was a routine mammogram. She didn't feel a lump. She hadn't gone for any other reason other than a routine mammogram, and they caught this cancer about as early as it could get caught. So I had the two parents at the opposite end of the spectrum, and I thought, shit, right, I need to try and work out how to get over. But obviously COVID made things a hell of a lot more interesting with that. So I had to put in an application to the Department of Home Affairs to get permission to leave. I had to provide lots of evidence, get doctor's letters from the GPs over in the UK and all that sort of stuff. Thankfully, Department of Home Affairs, they were amazing and actually provided me with permission to leave on Good Friday morning, which was incredible of them. So I really thank them for that. And I was on a plane Easter Sunday and in England Monday. Yeah, and then I was supposed to be there for 3 weeks just to see what the go was and everything, check the prognosis out, see how my mum's going, because she had an op booked in on the 19th. No, she didn't have the op booked in by that point. And then 2 days before I was due to leave, my dad had a major stroke in the morning. It sort of woke us up, and he was sort of lifeless, which for a 6'3" Geordie, it's a bit of a shocking thing to see. And yeah, so he got rushed to the hospital, and that's where he stayed for the remaining 2 weeks of his life. It looked like he was improving, and then and we were sort of living at hospital basically. The nurses were incredible, and another stroke sort of knocked it on the head. He was in a coma for 3 days, and thankfully I was by his side when he drew his last breath. And then, like I said, my mum, that was on a Sunday. No. So the Monday, I think it was, before he died, my mum went under the knife for breast cancer. So she was in hospital Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we were back in the hospital looking after the old man. And like I said, he called it a day on Sunday night at 9 o'clock, or just after 9 p.m.
Oh, mate.
And then, of course, after that, so that was a Sunday. Wednesday funeral. Wednesday funeral, Friday came home, and got locked up in probably the most luxurious prison known to man here at Crown.
So you get out of Crown on the 13th, I believe?
Sunday, this coming Sunday.
No, okay. So you haven't seen your beautiful wife and your two gorgeous kids for the best part of 2.5 months, a bit longer?
Yeah, I will probably talk. It'll be by the day I get home is 2 months exactly. It's 2 months exactly. So I was 6 weeks in the UK, 2 weeks here.
So the question is this, mate. How do you reckon you would have gone with all of what's happened over the last sort of 2 months if you hadn't have realised what was going on, you hadn't have owned it, and you hadn't have gone and got the help? How do you reckon you would have gone?
I'd have been screwed. Like, no two ways about it. Like, the problem is, prior to the diagnosis, depression and anxiety, prior to that, I was generally like 80% of the time, I'm super happy, super chilled. But that 20%, I was quite volatile. Like, not physical, but I'd snap pretty quickly. My temper would be pretty short. I think that period of time, combined with the fact that, my, subsequent research and homework and conversations with the professionals and stuff, like my wiring issues have been pretty deep rooted from, childhood. Not, my parents were awesome. They were amazing parents. Don't get me wrong. Like, I wanted for nothing, and they were fabulous. But unbeknownst to them, something was growing from a young age that wasn't great in terms of my behaviours and stuff. It's that sort of need to please people in order to feel validated. I didn't feel like I existed until I'd made someone happy, or I'd satisfied someone's desire, or whatever the case may be. And I reckon I would have snapped a hell of a lot, because the problem is, if you don't do any work towards it, if you just think meds and a little bit of chat to someone, if you don't get involved with your own recovery and whatnot, like I said, there's only one person with this wiring, and it's me. So I knew at some point I was going to have to sort it out myself at some point, right? People were going to show me the doors. I'd have to walk through them. So if I hadn't have done that, then I'd have, and the problem is when you snap, because that's part of it, right? That's part of depression and anxiety. You can't control those outbursts, those outpourings, right? And it causes sometimes irreparable damage to relationships. Like, I'm a good talker, man. So my words can be really sharp if they've got some intent behind them. Way more powerful than any fists. So that would have been a disaster zone on so many levels, bearing in mind that my family, my wife and kids were still over here.
Yeah, exactly. So you explained it to me, it was like you'd done all the training, and what has just happened, as horrific as it was, it was like your grand final, and you feel as though that you played well. It
was the acid test. It was the ultimate test. Like, 5 years, it really did feel like 5 years. It was all boiling up to this one period of time. Like, this was the culmination of all of those 5 years of hard work. Like I said to you, the grand final type moment. And I have not got one regret in terms of how I handled it. For possibly one of the first times ever, I actually feel proud for myself. Like I said, this is very foreign to me. The only time I feel proud is if I was in a team and a team won something, and I've been a part of a thing that's greater than me. This last period, this last 2 months, I'm really proud of myself, man. I really am, and it's something that I'm just, it's a strengthening experience and a maturing experience, quite a cathartic experience, that I was just so much more in control of my own emotions. And that's not to say that I didn't get upset, but it's the fact when I was feeling myself getting upset, I was totally cool with it because I knew what it was. And I was happy with it. It was weird. I was kind of happy in the knowledge that I knew I was upset. So I gave myself permission to be upset. Right. And that's a massive, massive tool that lots, like any of us that are in this sort of depression, anxiety, sort of, like I said, this going down this mental health lane, it's probably one of the toughest bits, to be honest, is to accept, acknowledge, and be in it. You know, accept it and feel it and be in it, and then allow yourself to come out of it in your own time.
Yeah. Mate, you should be really, really proud of yourself. I think it's an amazing story to go through what you've gone through and accept it, acknowledge it, do something about it, and then, as you say, put it to the acid test and come through with flying colours like you have, mate. There is nothing but hats off to you, my dear friend. You're a star, and I'm so happy that you are happy about what happened to you, mate. And your journey. It's not over by any stretch.
No,
but
it never will be.
What a huge hurdle to jump, and you've jumped it really, really well.
No.
Mate, we've got some questions here. We've got people just texting, mate, what a great bloke, what a great inspirational story. One guy here, I wish I had the strength to do that. Now, that's important. So that person there will get, I'm not going to read the name out, but that person will get what you did, mate. They will get that.
Look, man,
power. That's important. Now, we're going to another one here, mate. What sort of hang on, I've got to put the glasses on, mate. Hang on.
It's all good, mate.
I can tell that reflection coming off your bloody backdrop. What are the top tips you could give to blokes about looking out for symptoms for their mates, for their mental health?
For their mates?
What do you look for now? Yeah, what do you look for in your mates now that might be little trigger points for you to go, oh, hang on, there's something not quite right there?
It's a difference. It's when you notice a difference in their behaviour. Now, and this is where you got to be very, very sort of forthright when I say notice a difference in their behaviour, right? Because we've all got mates that just love a good whinge. Like, I'm a pom. It's kind of inbred in my DNA to have a right good whinge and a moan as and when I see fit, right? Otherwise I wouldn't be English, and it just wouldn't be British without a whinge. But so a difference in behaviour for someone like that would be when they are not whinging outwardly, when they're not just having a whinge because their footy team's shit, or or the beer tastes crap, or when they're not vocal about their first world problems, then that's a change in behaviour that might make you think, hey, hold on, how come he's not being a miserable prick?
Yeah,
exactly, right. And so it's noticing differences in behaviour that's really, really critical with that. And when it comes, other key things, generally speaking, if they're in a heterosexual relationship, generally speaking, the partners, there's the amount of times I've had either a partner come up to us and talk to us about something. They might not say something directly, but they'll know what I've been through and ask me a couple of questions. And I'm like, okay, that might mean that they're doing some homework on something for someone. So that's my personal thing, because people know what I've the trip that I've been on and whatnot, and the battle scars that I've got. So, but if you are, the thing is, because everyone talks about emotional intelligence, and one of the problems for blokes is they've had it shoved down their throats that from a society point of view, women are better than men when it comes to emotional intelligence, and women are just more in tune with their emotions, blah 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 blah. At the end of the day, within your gut if something's not quite right with the mate. You can be the blokiest blokes on the planet, right? But if your mate that you go fishing with every couple of weeks makes like the most bullshit excuse as to why they can't go fishing, that's not ideal. That's not ideal, and that's when you sort of raise a bit of an alarm bell to go, yo, is everything all right? Like, if they make just some BS excuse, I can't today, guys, and they're not, and they're just skirting around the issue, that's when there's a concern. Whether it's superficial, whether it's an embarrassing issue, like I don't know, whatever it is, like Mrs. has chopped his balls off or something, I don't know, could happen, or whatever, those sorts of things, they're, even for the alphas, so easy to pick up, because alphas are pretty much the most simple human beings, because they are so spade a spade, it's not even funny.
Exactly.
So,
mate, another person here is just going, thank you so much for sharing. Your honesty is refreshing, mate. I could go on, mate. Thank you so much, Andy, for tonight. Out of days now until you see Felicity and Eliza and Callum and mate. Oh, gee, tell you what, they're going to need chiropractic help because you were going to hug those little kids and your beautiful wife that bloody hard. They're going to need chiropractors for the next 6 months, mate. I wish I was there to see them with you with them. I can see the smile on your face, and mate, once you've settled down at home and you've spent some time with the family, we need to catch up and have a steak.
Mate, I would absolutely love that. It's on me. And guys, just please do your own homework. At the end of the day, that's the one big thing I will say. Like, knowledge is power, and there's so much free information on the internet. Don't go to the sites where it just says talk to people, or like do the homework. Like, what causes depression? What causes anxiety? And you'll start to see very quickly things in your own life and your own behaviors that are affecting you might not even realize. So please do your own homework on it. Don't do it. Don't struggle through it alone, but you've got to put in the effort yourselves.
Good on you, mate. Great words, and you will have inspired many people tonight with your openness and your honesty, and I think it'll enable other people to say, you know what, I'm like that, and I need to do what Andy did. So, mate, I can't thank you enough on behalf of myself and all the other members of 100 Words, of which you know quite a few. Mate, thank you very much for your time tonight. You're an absolute star.
No worries. And any of them, if you want to reach out, more than happy to.
Good on you, Andy. I really appreciate your time now. Andy also does a show called The Silver Lining, which you can catch. He does it about, now that he's in Crown by himself, he does it about 14 times a day. So jump on that and listen to Andy about some more. And he's got a lot of insights. And he's a great man. And it's been absolutely fantastic having him on. Well done, mate. Thank you very much.
No worries, man. You take care. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, too easy. Thanks, Andy. Awesome. What a great bloke Andy Reid is. Unbelievable. Now, next week we have, actually over the next 2 weeks, we have Nathan Burke, St Kilda captain and the current AFLW coach of the Western Bulldogs girls team, doing an amazing job there. He runs a consultant company about building resilience and high performance. And also a mate of mine, Darren Jolly, two-time premiership superstar with the Swans and with the Collingwood Football Club. Going through a tough time, but he's happy to come on and talk about it and share his story to encourage other people. So looking forward to those two over the next couple of weeks. As we do every week, we thank those people who do a lot of work for us. No one does more than Shelley Wood from Splice Communications. Unbelievable person whose kindness is never ending. Thank you very much, Shelley. To Matt Atkin, 61 Finance and Atlas Equipment Finance and the whole team there, do a hell of a lot for 100 Words, and we really, really appreciate it. And a dear friend of mine, Mr. Brett Phillips, who runs the only tennis show running across this country called The First Serve. Does a huge amount for the community. Does a lot for us at 100 Words, and we couldn't be happier to have him on board. So thank you so much. I hope this week coming up is a great week for you. It's a full week, not a short week like we've just had. So take care of yourselves. Take care of those who you love. And I hope your week's a 10 out of 10. We'll see you next week. See you later.